Hey, this is Seth Parnell, minister at the Portia Church of Christ, and this is episode 192 of the Midweek Bible Study. Hope that you are doing well. Hope you're doing okay, and we appreciate you being here with us tonight. We're marching on. We're at the end of the month of May, and so we're fixing to get into the middle point of the year. June, 6 months in. You know, what do you think about the year? Has it been a good one for you? Hopefully, it has. And time is flying, but we appreciate you spending a little bit of that time with us every Thursday night. Want to let you know that we will have our summer break coming up in the next couple of weeks, and so we will not have an episode next week or the week after that. I'll be at church camp for that second week, and then we'll be the third week after that's a little bit up in the air. So we'll have a little bit of break in there and episodes coming up, but hopefully we'll be back after that and see what we can get into as far as study. I do know that we'll have a guest. Michael Owens will be with us on the end of June, and so I think it's like 27th, I think, and so he'll be here, and so I know you're going to enjoy what he has to say. But we will take a look at that when it comes. I appreciate everyone being here and hope that you are doing all right. We wanted to also give you an invitation, as we always do. If you're in the local area, please feel free to come by and see us. We'd love to see you, love to talk with you, love to worship with you. We're located at 307 South Jackson Street in Portia, Arkansas. And right now, we are meeting at 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock on Sunday morning, 5 o'clock on Sunday night, and 6 o'clock on Wednesday night. And so hopefully, if you're in the area, you can come by and see us. We are having a gospel meeting on June the 16th through the 19th. And so if you can't make it on a Wednesday or a Sunday, you should come by and see us on a Monday or Tuesday during the meeting. Like I said, we would love to see you. And on Sunday night, we were having a fellowship meal. So if you want to get something to eat, you can come join us on that Sunday night. But you always know that you have an invitation to join us here at Portia. Also, if you have any suggestions for future episodes, have any topics or verses you'd like to be covered, we're going through the Judges as of right now, but send those our way if you have any suggestions on that part. We, of course, as we always want to do things that are beneficial for you, and so let us know what you think. But here tonight, we're going to be taking a look at Judges chapter 11. Judges chapter 11. Remember, we took a look at Tola and Jair last week, and those two judges that just have 2 sentences each, I think, with them, very little details, but there's always something good that we can get out of those people that we study. We took a look at Deborah, we took a look at, Ehud and Shamgar and Othniel. We took a look at all of them and saw how God used them to be deliverers of the people, even though they weren't the prototypical, usual hero of the story, as you might say. Still, God used them, and God used them well, even to the point of Gideon, where he only had 300 men. God delivered a mighty, mighty force into his hand, because God, in the end, is the one that gives the victory. It's good to have Donna and Vonda here. Hope that you guys are doing well. Appreciate you being here with us. I always enjoy seeing you on here. And so hope that you've had a wonderful day here today. But in Judges chapter 11, and actually in chapter 10, it kind of sets the stage here for the story. But in chapter 11, we're going to get introduced to a man by the name of Jepthah. And Jepthah is going to be one of those characters that is a very functional, judge. He's not going to be the most spiritual person. He's not going to be a person who's going to lead a spiritual revival, even though he is very knowledgeable of the Old Testament. He's very knowledgeable about the history of Israel. He's not really all that much of a spiritual leader. You take a look at people such as, Othniel and such as Deborah. They were very conscious of the role that God played in their victory and in their process, in their defense of their nation. But Jepthah is going to be a little bit different. He's going to kind of veer a little bit further away from that spiritual side of things, and he is going to be a more of a practical, more of a functional judge, as we're going to see here. And he's also known as being the rash judge, because we might see here later on. We may take 2 episodes to cover this guy. I'm not sure, because there's a lot to look at here. But we will take a brief look at this man by the name of Jepthah, and see how good of a judge he is, and what he's been up to here in Judges chapter 11. But if you start out here in the chapter, if you start out in verse 1, we're introduced to this man, where it says, Jephthah the Gileadite was a mighty warrior, but he was the son of a prostitute. Gilead was the father of Jephthah, and Gilead's wife also bore him sons. And when the wife's sons grew up, they drove Jephthah out and said to him, You shall not have an inheritance in our father's house, for you are the son of another woman. And then Jephthah fled from his brothers and lived in the land of Tob, where worthless fellows collected around Jephthah and went out with them. And so we're introduced, to this man, and as you notice, it doesn't say that he was a faithful person. It doesn't say that he was, somebody who was mighty in, in your worship, to God. It doesn't say any of those types of descriptions. But how is he introduced? It says that now Jephthah the Gileadite was a mighty warrior. He was a strong person in battle. And this is going to dictate almost the entire direction of his life. That because he is strong in battle, because he has been able to perform mighty deeds on the plain of war, then he's going to be the vessel that God is going to use in order to deliver Israel once again. Because if you look at the previous chapter, in chapter 10, as we see with that cycle of judges, they've already sinned, they've already fallen back into idolatry, and then they fell under a kind of a semi-form of oppression. As we see here, it's not going to be full on until we get to the main story here of Jepthah, but God is not all that happy, with them here in this case. But Jepthah is described as a mighty warrior. You think of people such as David, who's described as a mighty warrior. You think of, other individuals such as his mighty men. You think of, some of the individuals who were able to fight, in battles very well. Joshua was a great, a military leader. As we looked at, some of the others, the Shamgar and Othniel, they were mighty warriors who conquered, cities. This is the company that Jepthah in. He's described as a mighty warrior. And you might think, as being a mighty warrior, that he would be respected, that he would be elevated in his society. He'd be given some honor in his society. But as we'll see here, still in verse 1, that wasn't exactly the case. As it says, now Jephthah the Gileadite was a mighty warrior, but he was the son of a prostitute. And Gilead was the father of Jepthah. And so we see the problem here as far as his family situation is concerned. We see the problem here right away. As we know, today we think this is something that is important, but in this, kind of honor-based society that they had back then, and with some of the culture things and the culture issues that they had and the laws that they had, this was a very, very big deal. And so Jepthah was the son of Gilead, who was kind of the father of this group of people. But he says that he was the son of a prostitute. And so Gilead had an interaction with a prostitute. She became pregnant, and so Jepthah was the child born from that. But Gilead was also married to his wife, as we'll see here in verse 2, and she also bore him sons. And so we see that for whatever reason, whether it's just his the decision that he made, or if there's any other circumstances surrounding it, but it appears that Jepthah was born of that prostitute, and then his brothers or his half brothers would be born after that, from Gilead's wife. And even though he is a mighty warrior, even though he's someone who is strong, it says that when his wife's sons grew up, They drove Jepthah out and said to him, "You shall not have an inheritance in our father's house, for you are the son of another woman." And so when they finally grew up and they were, you know, actually when they were old enough or big enough and strong enough to actually do something about this, they drove Jepthah out. They drove him away from home. They drove him away from the land, that they lived, and said, "You shall not have an inheritance with us. If we don't want you here. We don't want you to be here. We don't want to be associated with you in any way because you are the son of another woman." And so because of this, as we'll see in verse 3, Jephthah flees from his brothers and he lives in the land of Tob. And there he finds a new family of sorts. It says that worthless fellows collected around Jephthah and went out with him. And so there are several things that we can look at here just in this opening paragraph, just in this first section of the story, that I think bear some significance to us. As we know, he was someone who was very talented in warfare. He was a very, very mighty warrior, but he did have this family situation. And because of this, his sons, either it was out of greed, to have a bigger portion of the inheritance, or if they were legitimately concerned about the honor of their family, with, him being the son of a prostitute, we're not given their motivation, but, they drive him out. But thinking about this, was Jephthah had no control whatsoever about who his parents were. Nobody does. Nobody has, has any say or any control over, who they are born to or who their parents are. We know that's something that is completely and utterly out of our control. But yet they punish him so much for this that they drive him away from home and make it to where, he can't even come back. Probably couldn't come back, to see his father or to see his mother, or to even be around where he grew up. They drove him away from that place, but just because of something that was outside of his control. As Christians, we need to be someone who judges people based upon their heart, based upon their character, based upon the goodness of the person within, and not on these external factors that many times are outside of the person's control. As we see, Jephthah, he had no control of this. He had no say in who his father or who his mother was, but yet they persecuted him, for this. We can't be a people that kind of follow into that same negative example. But we got to be someone who looks at somebody and judges somebody based upon their heart, based upon their goodness, and not on those other, kind of superficial factors, that we can see. But it's good to have Jackie Henry. Hope that you've had a wonderful day today. Hope that you are doing well and May has treated you good. I always appreciate you stopping by here. But we're studying about Jepthah here in Judges here, chapter 11, and talking about how they treated him, growing up. Because you think, as Christians, a lot of times we're very uncomfortable with the idea of, judging, with the idea of, being someone who passes judgment on someone. We remember Matthew chapter 7, verse 1, judge not lest you be judged, that famous verse that Jesus says. But we are called to judge as Christians. We are called to judge as people, but not based upon those superficial, factors. You think of, James' instructions in James chapter 2. What does he say about the man who comes in with a, wealth and with, a ring and with, fancy robes, and a man comes in who is, very poor? He says, don't put, the wealthy person, up front and kind of hide the poorer person in the back, but treat them all equally, because we don't judge on the outward appearance. We don't judge on the status of a person or the importance of a person, but, we judge, based upon the heart and character of a person. If somebody is, doing wickedness, if somebody is, disrespecting, God, and they are living apart from God, then as Paul instructed the Corinthian church, we should not be someone who just, blindly ignores that because, we're afraid to judge. But we need to address that, and as he says, address it with kindness, address it with gentleness, but also address it with strength, and address it with, a willingness to uphold the honor and the respect, for God. We want to do that, and so we don't want to, like I said, follow the example of these people, of, Jephthah's family, and, use these superficial and sometimes ridiculous factors in order to form our own opinion of somebody. But we want to be someone who judges them by their heart. And it's not judgment as in the case of, this is a good person or this is a bad person, but it's in the realm of, being in a place where you can, support them, or you can, help them, or you can encourage them, all the day long. And so we can be someone who is doing what is right and who is glorifying God with what He has, given us. And so that's how we want to look at people. You remember the scene in 1 Samuel when Samuel was told to go to the house of Jesse and to anoint one of his sons as the next king of Israel. And Samuel's like, which one? And God says, I will show you which one. So he goes through the entire line from the biggest and the tallest, down the line, and basically says, I've ran out of people. I don't know, who else there is. Do you have any more sons, Jesse? And he says, I got one more who is out there keeping the sheep, a man by the name of David. And so in the end, God tells Samuel, I don't look on the outward appearance of man, but I judge you on the heart. And that's the example that we need to follow, to encourage those who are down, to lift those up, and to be there and support those who are trying to do good and who are trying to walk that narrow road, to stand against those who are trying to turn people away from the gospel, who are trying to teach things that are against, what the gospel stands for. Sometimes we have to stand up against those forces and against those types of people. But it would be easy if, everyone agreed with your Christianity and everyone, supported it. But as we know, that's not the case. Some people want to twist it for their own ends. Some want to get rid of it entirely. But we need to stand up and be strong, for the faith. And as he said, so that we can be someone who's found to be judging with a right, judgment. And so Jepthah is driven away from home because of these external factors. And when he gets to the land of Tob, where he's going to reside, it says that worthless fellows collected around him, and that and kind of went out with him, basically saying went out with him to battle. And people have kind of speculated about this term, worthless fellows, and some people believe that this is just a term for the kind of the outcasts of society, for the poorer individuals, the ones who have maybe had a checkered past and kind of lived in dishonor. These people who kind of outcast from society, that they kind of collected around him. They formed this band. And so instead of having that family that he was born into, Jepthah kind of, finds this family of people who appeared to have some of the similar experience to him, who had a kind of a shared, experience, with them. And they come together and they are ready to make a difference and kind of to just make a living, is what he's trying to do here in this case. And this word of his exploits gets back to his family, as we're going to see. It's going to play a part here in just a minute. But this idea of finding these worthless fellows, or these these individuals that collect around him, he wasn't able to enjoy all that much the family that he was born into, but he found a family in these individuals. And this was something that ended up, supporting him as he went through. And that, and in many aspects, that is what the church can do, for us. As we know, uh, you're not someone who, if you're not someone who's necessarily born into a church. As we know, everyone has a personal responsibility to either be obedient or disobedient, to the gospel. It's not something that is, faithfulness is not something that is passed down, through our genes. But while we can be put in an environment where we can learn from, where we can, be taught, the gospel from a very early age. I know growing up, I was in church, every time the doors were open, growing up. Not because of really necessarily of my idea, not because I was someone who was, so gung ho for that, but my mother said you're going to be there, and that's where you're going to be, and that influenced me in a pretty big way, and because of that, I was able to build a foundation for my faith, and so. And it's true that that's not. I'm fully aware that that's not in the situation for every person, and not the situation for most people. There's a lot of people who have, family situations, and who have, grow up in a family that does not care anything about spiritual things, does not care anything, about the gospel, and doesn't support it, in any way. But when you come, to the church, you can find a family. You can find a family that will love you, a family that will support you, a family that will help you along the way. There's a song that we sing in our songbook called God's Family. It kind of speaks to that aspect of how there's that family nature to the church. If what do we sometimes refer to each other as? That's brother so and so, right? That's sister so and so. We use the term brother and sister quite frequently, to describe a fellow Christian, because there's that family aspect. And so no matter where you are, no matter where what corners of the earth your life has led you to, no matter what the things that you have done in your past, we can find a family with the family of God. We can find a family in the church, and they can be there for us and help us get closer to that narrow way, so that we can be living a life that God has prescribed for us. And that is something that is invaluable when we're going throughout this life, because if you think about it, being a Christian is not the easiest thing to do. It's not the sometimes it doesn't come naturally all the time. But if you had the task of being a Christian all by yourself and no one else was around you, that would be an almost impossible task to do. But because we have other people, because we have the church, because we have a family to support us, then we have a shot. We have the ability to be able to be a faithful Christian all our life. And so this is very, very important. And I find it interesting that he loses his family, but he finds another one here in Judges chapter 11 and verse 3. As we'll see here later on, this is going to play a role in the further aspects of his life. But in verse 4, as it says, after a time the Ammonites made war against Israel. When the Ammonites made war against Israel, the elders of Gilead went to bring Jepthah from the land of Tob. And they said to Jepthah, "Come and be our leader, that we may fight against the Ammonites." But Jepthah said to the elders of Gilead, "Did you not hate me and drive me out of my father's house? Why have you come to me now, when you are in distress?" And the elders of Gilead said to Jepthah, "This is why we have turned to you, that you may go with us and fight against the Ammonites, and be our head over all the inhabitants of Gilead." Jepthah said to the elders of Gilead, "If you bring me home again to fight against the Ammonites, and the Lord gives them over to me, I will be your head." And the elders of Gilead said to Jepthah, the Lord will be witness between us if we do not do as you say. So Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him head and leader over them. And Jephthah spoke all his words before the Lord at Mizpah. And so, as we see, Jephthah's not completely divorced. He's not completely separated from God, but he does have some faith to him, as he said he spoke all these words before him at Mizpah. But he's over there in the land of Tob, and he is doing his thing with this family that he has found when the Ammonites make war against Israel. And the people of Gilead don't know what to do. They need someone strong. They need someone mighty in order to lead them in this conquest. Apparently, they had a shortage of leaders in Israel. They had a shortage of good leaders in Gilead, and they knew they were going to need their best in order to fight against the Ammonites. And so they've heard of the exploits of Jepthah, and they say, well, why don't we go get him? Why don't we go get Jepthah? He's a mighty warrior. He can lead us against these Ammonites. And so they send word to Tob, and they bring him over. They strike a deal with him, and they say, because he says, why did you bring me here? Don't you hate me? Didn't you drive me out of your father's house? Why are you coming to me now when you are in trouble? And they explain to him the situation with the Ammonites, and he strikes a deal with them and says, basically saying, if I help you, you're basically going to make me, your king. You're going to make me, you're the head over all of Gilead. And they say there in verse 10, the Lord will be witness between us if we do not do as you say. And so this man goes from being an outcast, someone who had to run away from home, to someone who is the head of Israel, or who is the head of at least of the region of Gilead here in this area. Now, this is not going to come for free, as we're going to see. There's a reason why they came and got him. But it's quite a story, quite a turnaround from someone who is completely thrown away by society to someone who is now their leader. And he's going to be given the task of defending Israel against the Ammonites so that they can remain free, so they can remain free from oppression. And God's going to use the mighty warrior nature of Jepthah in order to fight against Israel's enemies. As the Ammonites are going to make war against them, something they have a history with the Ammonites before, as we're going to see here later on. But they are going to end up fighting in this battle. So as we see, and it's something that, as I said, is a theme through all these judges. We've mentioned the last episode, I mentioned the episode before that, excuse me. A theme for all these judges is that no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, God can use you in some way, in some fashion, to great effect. Even this outcast, God is going to use him in order to be the deliverer of Israel. And in verses 12 and following, he's going to have a conversation with the king of the Ammonites, and he's basically going to say, why are you attacking us? Why are you making war against us? And they're going to kind of have a back and forth between each other and have a conversation that it's kind of interesting to take a look at, as we'll see here later on. Eventually, that dialogue is going to break down, and they're going to have to go to war. But we will probably take a look at the rest of this at a later date. We kind of spent more time on this first section here than I thought we would, but there's a lot more to the story of Jepthah here. We take a look at down verses 12 down following it. We'll see this conversation that he has with the king, and then in verses 29, and then and especially in verse 34, we have what Jepthah is known for. As we know, usually there's one thing that for each judge that they're known for. Ehud is known as being the left-handed judge. Samson is known for having his strength. Gideon is known for the 300, for only having the 300 men during his battle. They're all known for these different things. Jepthah is going to be known for the story that we find here in verses 29 and following, where he's going to make, as the text describes here, a tragic vow, a rash vow, which is something that's the focus of a lot of study in Old Testament study. If you've kept up with it, there's a lot of different kind of aspects to take a look at that. And so we'll probably take a deeper look at, especially this part here, next time we get together and we have a chance to study, the Judges. But as I always do, I encourage you to read Judges chapter 10 and Judges chapter 11 to read the full story of Jephthah and let me know what you think about him as a judge, about him as a deliverer of Israel. I think that we'll call it there, and we will look forward to being with you next time. As I said at the start, of our program, we will not have an episode next week or the week after that. We heading into our summer break. We used to have a winter break and a summer break, and so we won't have an episode for the next 2 weeks, maybe 3, but we'll for sure be back the week after that, the 4th week, and so we'll be sure be back by then. But we'll be having our summer break, and so hopefully you can you'll have a wonderful June, wonderful kind of midpoint of the year. As we're fully getting into summer, we're going to get those good warm temperatures. You're going to be able to experience the middle of the year, and so hopefully you enjoy that time as I do, and are able to do some good things. Good to have Cheryl here. Hope that you are doing well. Hope you've had a wonderful day. Always appreciate you being here, and it's good to see you coming here right at the end. We Donna says, "A great lesson and have a good Friday." Hope you have a good one as well. Always, I hope that it treats you well and that you're able to enjoy what it has to offer. But I think that's all we have for here tonight. Don't forget about our gospel meeting, June 16th through the 19th. And so remember that and come see us. We'd love to see you. And other than that, until we meet again, hope you can go out and be the light of the world and glorify God in everything that you do. Catch you next time.